Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine, better than me. Okay, we have a very energetic day today. Going to talk about energy. What the hell is energy? We all talk about energy. Does anybody know what energy is? Well, I certainly don't. So I want people to tell me what energy is. Yeah. Okay, we have some fan mail, and I'm going to deal with a couple of administrative issues first. A couple people, several people in fact, had problems this week, and they complained that either I was blocking them or deleting their comments. I'm not sure what their gripe was. And one fellow even had problems. Says that I banned him on Patreon. Well, I don't know if this is a campaign to discredit this channel. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I have nothing to do with it. I don't ban anyone. I don't block any. I don't even know how to block people. I've never blocked anyone in my entire life. Okay, never on the internet. Never blocked anyone. You can cuss my mother. I don't care. So you're welcome here, whether you're foe or friend, friend or foe. Okay. So I don't know what's going on. You got to check with the YouTube, I don't know. Patreon, I have no idea. I did talk to Patreon about the fellow who complained about Patreon. They just told me, for him to get in contact with them, he might have a problem with his account or his registration. I have no idea. I have nothing at all to do with that. So just want to make that clear. I don't erase comments. I don't deal with comments really. In fact, I do clarify to people I do not answer comments typically on YouTube unless it's some kind of administrative issue. Someone doesn't know how to reach us or whatever. Then I might clarify something. I don't answer questions there. I usually answer them either at Patreon or I'll answer them here during one of the lectures, okay, so that everybody's aware what the question is and what the answer is. Another issue raised by someone says, Rational Science Group on Facebook, would you include the group link in the description of the next video? Yeah, I put it in the description. I think I'm going to include it from now on. And essentially, it's a couple groups. Here they are. They're known as the Rational Scientific Method. I always refer to them as rational science, but they have these names. Both of them have the same name, Rational Scientific Method. There's a third one run by Jake Archer. What is this? Rational Science and Technology, I think is the name of his group, but they're not rational. That's the only. Okay, so I don't recommend that group, but it's up to you if you want to check with him. He runs his own shop there. Okay, anyways, here's another comment. Let's start to roll because we got a big day today, long day today, okay? We can't have ecology being used to explain human extinction when it is economy. Yeah, it is ecology because of economy. In other words, the dinosaurs disappeared when their economy went south. Okay, and people say, you're crazy, Bill. What are you talking about? Yeah, all animals have economics. They're experts at economics. What is economics? Management of resources. The only resource, or the 99% of any animal's resources, is food. That's what they manage, especially out there in the wild. Every day they have to go out there and hunt, or like the spider, he opens his door and waits for customers to drop in. So there's all sorts of tactics out there. But yeah, it has to do with economics. Economics has to do with the extinction mechanism. I'll go over that in a second here. It says the things you suggested for your reasons to say genetics is a two-part question first, okay? What is genetics? Well, okay, that's a long one, okay? Let's keep going here. So we use the word inbreeding, but you can't explain inbreeding except for in the genetic realm. Ask from Adam and Eve if he knows what WTF inbreeding is. Okay, so let's do a little inbreeding here. So we clarify that point at least. Okay, and here it is. Okay. This is a summary, and I pretty much agree with this analysis by the evolution branch of PBS, okay, Public Broadcasting System. When a small part of a population moves to a new locale, or when the population is reduced to a small size because of some environmental change, the genes of the founders, right, of the new society are disproportionately frequent in the resulting population. If individuals in the group tend to marry within it, there's a greater likelihood that the recessive genes of the founders will come together in the cells that produce offspring. Thus, diseases of recessive genes which require two copies of the gene to cause the disease will show up more frequently than they would if the population married outside the group. Okay, so this is, in a nutshell, I thought it was a good summary. Okay, that's why I picked it, pulled it. Summary of what inbreeding is about. Okay, you inbreed, you're gonna screw your genetics. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want to give you some examples because sometimes that's more, it drives the point home a lot better. And here it is, okay? Um, Here's the one famous case today, which is the Amish, okay? I'll put it over here. And they are inbreeding. They've been inbreeding for the last 300 years. I mentioned this a couple times already, but here's just one article, and you'll find tons of articles on the Amish. They are being studied in very great detail. Okay, almost every single Amish person living in the United States today is descended from one of 200 or so 18th and 19th century German Swiss immigrants. Okay, so they all come from this group. I heard it was 1,500 families. I heard now 200 individuals. You know, I don't think that it matters. We're talking about a very small group of founders, period. That's it. Genetic variation is minimal, which is thought to contribute unusually high rates of dwarfism and developmental delays, as well as mysterious disorders seldom seen outside of the group. And this is true. They have diseases that no one else on earth has because of their inbreeding. They marry amongst themselves. That's why it's a good group to study for inbreeding. Okay, while the gene may confer longer average life, people with two copies of it, one from each parent, could be susceptible to a rare genetic bleeding disorder, a form of hemophilia. And that's where I want to take you next because we have some famous cases. And here they are. See if I can get them here. First one is this fellow. If I can get him up here. Give me a second. Okay, his name is Charles II of Spain. Okay, he lived in the 17th century. At the end, he died in that last year of that century. And said you can just look him up. He was from the Habsburg family. He was the last one, known as El Hechizado in Spanish, and the Bewitched. Why? Because he was born kind of weird. Okay, son of Mariano of Austria and Philip IV of Spain, who was 56-year-old at the time of his son's birth. For political reasons, marriages between Spanish and Austrian Habsburgs were common. Philip and Mariano were uncle and niece, making Charles their great nephew and first cousin once removed, respectively. All 8 of his great grandparents were descendants of Joanna and Philip I of Castile. The best known consequence of such inbreeding is the Habsburg jaw. If you look at all the Habsburgs, from Charles I all the way to this fellow, Charles II, you'll see that they have a very funny jaw. Okay, that includes all the Philips. Okay, a physical characteristic shared by many Habsburgs, including Charles. Okay, this guy was born wrong. Why? Because I think because of inbreeding. There's a debate among historians about that, and also doctors who study geneticists and so on. In my mind, there's no doubt. This guy was the result of inbreeding several generations. And if you don't believe me, okay, here I'll give you another famous example. I think a lot of you know this fellow. Okay, if I get him up here, come on. Okay, and that's Romanov, the son of the last Tsar, I guess, Nicholas II of Russia. He was deposed in 1917. They were all murdered in 1918. And here you can see what happened to Alexei, Nicholas's son. The only son he had. He had four daughters and one son. The daughters were okay, but this kid was born with what? Hemophilia. Okay, as a granddaughter of Queen Victoria Alexandra, which is Nicholas's second wife, right? She was German, and she was granddaughter of Queen Victoria of England, of the UK, carried the same gene mutation that afflicted several of the major European royal houses, such as Prussia and Spain. Hemophilia therefore became known as the royal disease. Through Alexandra, the disease had passed on to her son. And you can see here are the two cousins, Nick and George, and they look like twins. They look very similar, and that's famous. And here you can see, where do I have it? Here. This is their family tree. This is the family tree of both Nicholas of Russia and Queen Victoria of England. And if you go back in time, they both came from George the First, who was king of Germany, of one of the provinces in one of the realms of Germany. There was no Germany at the time. He was a Prussian. He was, I think, Prussian. And he was brought in as the King of England. Okay, several generations later, we have Queen Victoria come from him, and so did Nicholas of Russia come from him. And Nicholas married Alexandra, who was Queen Victoria's granddaughter, and so she comes from the same line. So you can see, these people married amongst themselves, and several generations later, yeah, they would get hemophilia or some other disease, okay, or they would come out like poor old Charles II of Spain, the bewitched. Okay, so yeah, inbreeding produces bad things. In fact, I once theorized, you can take this, and spread it around if you like the theory. But, if you read Frederick Engels' book, The Origin of the Family, the State, and Private Property, and he was a communist, but he got his ideas from a previous guy who had been around with the Iroquois Indians, and he stayed with them like for 3 years. He was considered a brother, and he studied them in detail, especially their family relations. And he Engels comes out from all that study. He concludes that at some point way in the past, perhaps before the Neolithic, um, they decided that it was a bad deal to marry within the family. And maybe what they discovered was that if they married within the family, father with daughter, or daughter and brother, and any close relationship like that, maybe the kids came out wrong, and maybe that's why they outlawed inbreeding within the family. And first, it must have been, brother and sister, father and daughter, that sort of thing. And eventually, they even separated cousins, even though the kings of of our day and age could preserve their world, their realms. They married amongst themselves, and I think they shot themselves in the foot by doing so. But people stopped marrying amongst themselves. With people from the clan, from the same clan, from the same family tree, except Einstein, who married his direct cousin. But he had one of his sons came out wrong, but it was with Mileva, his first wife. But yeah, you never know. Inbreeding does not produce good offspring, so it's not recommended at all. And the other one comes from example comes from John Calhoun's rat and mouse experiments, which I covered a couple weeks ago. So you can look that up, and that's another one that shows you that inbreeding is not a good idea, especially from the same founding fathers, the founders effect. Okay, moving on here. The following related to extinction says, anyway, you play the word value. Most people can understand that. A few chicken for one of the neighbor's turkeys. Okay, yeah, again, I can only tell you what I think, and I'm saying that um, you cannot have any kind of trade after the global economy collapses. Why? Because the only thing you can trade is food, and no one in the wild, when you're a hunter-gatherer, especially in the asphalt jungle, trades food. Food is a scarce commodity. And I synthesized it here the other day. I shortened it a little bit because I took away the gold part. But anyways, Disneyland economics, that's trade. And natural economy, that's food. That's the difference between them. And yeah, when Disneyland economy suddenly, overnight, turns into the natural economy, no one produces food anymore except some, farmer out there in the middle of nowhere. Well, they're going to be overrun. There's all the individual farmers are going to be run by people from the city desperate to get food because there won't be food in the cities. Okay, so whether you have a cow or a pig or whether you plant corn or wheat, it won't matter. They'll overrun your farm and you're going to have thousands of people just eating whatever. They're going to be like the locusts. They're just going to swarm over your farm. And you're just going to have to defend it. And I'm not sure you can defend against thousands of people. Someone will survive. It could be you, but it could be someone else as well. And yeah, you trade surplus. And in the natural economy, there is no surplus. Okay. All you can do is trade food, and no one does. Lions don't trade food with other lions or with cheetahs or with hyenas. No, everybody just steals and kills and drives the other guy away. That's the way it works in the natural economy. So there's no friendship out there. You don't trust even your next door neighbor because he might have different intentions. Okay. And it's up to everybody to decide whether they're going to trust the fella next door or not, or the guy across the street, especially in this day and age when we don't even know who their names anymore. Hunter-gatherers don't trade food, especially if they are in a subsistence regime, which is where we're going to be headed, as far as I'm concerned, when the economy collapses. And that's a when, not an if. And in the asphalt jungle, the only thing of value is food. And again, no one trades food because it's a scarce commodity. That's my 5 cents worth. If I can get this up. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. Okay. Anyways, another issue along those same lines. Okay. The only thing of value in the concrete jungle is food. Okay. And this doesn't explain extinction. It describes hunter-gatherers. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not, when I say that the only thing of value is food, that's not the issue of extinction. In other words, that's not a mechanism. That just tells you that that's all that has value. Okay. Now, if you want a mechanism, which is what I propose, okay, and here let me put another question up there because it's along the same line. We'll answer both of them. And this fellow says, does trade extinction model hold if engineering provides more power than we can use? Well, this is not an issue of power or electricity or energy, which is what we're going to deal with today. It's got to do strictly with the mechanism. So I just want you to understand the mechanism I'm proposing. Whether you buy it or not, that's your personal issue, your personal problem. Here it is, okay? And let me get this one out of the way. There we go. And on the left, you see a healthy or normal ecological pyramid, which is a 10-to-1 ratio between trophic levels. You have few predators preying on a lot more herbivores. Usually herbivores, they had better be a lot more than predators. And herbivores have to be much smaller group than primary production, usually plants, right? And usually there's a 10-to-1 ratio between trophic levels for a ecological pyramid to be to be healthy. Okay, what does our ecological pyramid look like? Well, because we produce food upon demand almost. I mean, you go to the hamburger shop, McDonald's or whatever, you ask for a hamburger and you get it sometimes. You're lucky you get it within 10 minutes, right? And that's how fast it is. Did they kill the cow and grind it and do all that stuff? No, no, that's already done in advance because we're so efficient that we can produce food upon demand. But what happens because of that, we do not have the same situation as wild animals. We don't have 10-to-1 ratio between trophic levels. Now, this pyramid, if you look at the numbers, they don't match today's numbers because I did this a few years back. But the pyramid structure is what's important here. And here you had 6.6 billion humans who were feeding on 4.5 billion large livestock. I didn't count chickens, which there's billions of those. Okay, didn't count fish, etc. Okay, so there's some animals missing from that group, but the important thing is that the cereals that we produce, which is primarily what humans eat as far as veggies are concerned, they don't, by no means is there a 10-to-1 ratio between plants and us, or even between plants and livestock, because we don't need to have so much cereals when you have an efficient economy. Okay, but an efficient economy is an unhealthy ecological pyramid because the day that money disappears, that trade disappears, trade is no more, then that whole thing cannot support the 6.6 billion humans at the top. That's the problem. Whatever's on Earth, that's it. That's all we have to eat. Okay. So this is the issue. The issue is that right now we don't have a very healthy pyramid. Now, the argument here is that it's not the ecological pyramid, the fact that our ratios is going to kill us. What's really going to kill us is the fact that we will not produce any more food like we do today. See, we don't have food stocked up like the biblical pharaohs that supposedly had food for 7 years. Okay, that's what the Bible tells us. Okay, let's concede that as fact, as truth. Let's assume the Egyptian pharaohs had 7 years worth of food stocked up in their silos. Fine. We don't have that today. We don't have 7 years worth of food on the planet for all humans because we don't need it, because we're very efficient, because we produce food upon demand. Okay, so we need to get that straightened down. We produce food upon demand, so we do not have to have 7 years, 10 years, 50 years worth of food. What we have is a few months, if anything, until the next harvest. Okay, or next time we kill cattle or pigs or chickens or whatever we put into the market. So we don't need, we have a flow, okay, of food. We have a very good flow because we're very efficient, but that efficiency dies suddenly, overnight, the day money collapses, the day trade is no more, because no one now has an incentive to produce more food for you. He might produce food for himself, but not for you anymore, because you have nothing to trade. What are you going to trade if there's no trade, no money, if money is no more? That's the argument, okay? Whether you accept the foundation, in other words, the assumption that there will be no money, that's a separate issue. I'm saying that if there is no more trade, if there is no more money, then for sure the producers and distributors will no longer produce or distribute food to the cities. That's where all the population is, or the majority of the population is. What are they going to do? They're going to rush to the country and eat everything in sight like the locusts. Okay, that's the argument, that's the theory, believe it or not. That's your issue, okay? Okay, let's move on to a little bit of physics. By the way, I've started putting the timestamps so that if you're not interested in extinction, you can go jump directly into physics and vice versa, okay? Okay, here we have first physics issue, abstractionism, see structuralism, philosophy of mathematics on Wikipedia. What was the issue? The issue is that I said that the so-called physicists, the mathemagicians as I call them, mathematical physicists, no such monster, but that's what they call themselves. uh, these people have been moving more and more into abstract mathematics and farther away from physics because abstract is the opposite, the antonym of physical. So if like Max Born said, physics is becoming more and more abstract, then it's getting farther and farther away from physics because physics is physical and abstract is the opposite. Okay, so today we have an abstract world of mathematics which has been substituted for true, genuine, real physics. Okay, and so I look up this word in the Wikipedia, okay, and this is what we find in there. It says structuralism is a theory. Absolutely not. It's no theory whatsoever. It's just definition. No theory. Theory is an explanation. Structuralism doesn't explain anything. But that holds that mathematical theories describe structures of mathematical objects. Again, no such monster as a mathematical object. This is mathematical nonsense, idiocy invented by the mathemagicians. There's either objects or there's concepts, and a mathematical object is not an object, it is a concept. And here you have, in fact, you'll see it right here. It says mathematical objects are exhaustively defined by their places in such structures. In science, we do not define objects. If you define something, it's a concept automatically. In science, we point to objects and name them. You point to a horse, you point to a dog, you point to a rock, and that's how you introduce objects in science, in physics. These guys are saying they're going to define it, and therefore it's a concept. Again, the word object is very misleading. Consequently, structuralism maintains that mathematical objects do not possess any intrinsic properties but are defined by their external relations in a system. In other words, it's a relation and therefore it is a concept. And the last one is the punchline. It says, for instance, structuralism holds that the number one is exhaustively defined by being the successor of zero in the structure of the theory of natural numbers. Yeah, there's no structure, first of all. They're talking about nonsense. And second, number one is not an object. Maybe it's a mathematical object, which means it's a concept, has nothing to do with objects. And the word object and the word structuralism or structure or whatever is very, very misleading, as all words of mathematics. Okay, the word particle, very misleading. The word field, misleading. Energy, we're going to deal with that today. All those words are misleading. Mass, very misleading. All those words are misleading because people think they're talking about objects, mathematical objects, and they're not. They may be mathematical, but for sure they're not objects. They're concepts. Concepts, what does that mean? It's abstract. What does that mean? It means it's the opposite of physical. They're getting away from physics, okay? So math has nothing to do with physics. Math has nothing to do with science. Science, we got to explain mechanisms, not do equations, measurements, experiments, predictions, and all that nonsense, descriptions. None of that has anything to do with science. They've been doing that for the last 10,000 years. Here we correct them. Okay, here we go with another one, another issue. Still related to the issue of objects and things. Don't be misled by the word God. If God was the shape of the entire rope, okay, I guess he's talking about the thread, but okay, would that not make God eligible for the type of existence you are talking about? You use quite a lot of objects you cannot see, and still believe they exist, based only on the math and description given by mathemagicians. Well, the key issue here is belief and also exists, okay? The key issue is that we do not believe in existence, not in science. That's in religion, that's in mathematics, that's in ordinary speech, never in science, okay? In science, we do not believe. In science, what we do, we define the word exist, and First, let me show you the single loop. Okay, that's what essentially that's what he's saying. He's saying, what if the single loop, we call that God? Yeah, you can call it X. You can call it whatever you want. God, you want to call it God? Fine. Is this what you're going to pray to? A thread out there and say, oh, dear thread, dear God, please grant me my wish and, make me win the lottery or whatever. Is this what you pray to? A thread? Obviously, if all there is a thread and you want to call that thread God or whatever, X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. You can't pray to it. The thread's not listening to you. Okay, so we still have a problem with this notion of God being the creator, God being the guy who concedes wishes or hears you or takes you to heaven, you know. And then the other issue is here, and that's the definition that we have for the word exist. Okay, and well, let me put it over. Hey, let me put it over here. If I can get it here. There we go. Do you see in that definition anywhere where I say belief? See, it's the theist, the atheist, and the agnostic, these three religions that talk about belief. They talk about belief. One guy says, oh, I believe that God exists. The other guy says, I know God doesn't exist. And the other guy said, well, I don't know if God exists because I don't know how we can prove it. And none of these people are scientists. They're all ordinary folk who have amateurs who have no idea what science is about. So we rail against theists, atheists, and agnostics. In fact, the atheists, that's the religion of mathemagicians. Only mathemagicians are atheists because they don't know what science is about. In science, we do not believe. We do not use the word belief. That's religion. And we do not use the word know because the word know means believe. It's a synonym of believe, just like justified true belief, if we listen to Plato. And so none of those words have anything to do with science. And science is not about knowledge. Science is not about belief. Science is about explaining. Explanation, boom, period. Stop. Full stop. And what we say is not believe. We say let us assume that God exists. God cannot be a theory. God can only be an assumption. You can say, let us assume God exists. Okay, concede the assumption. And now the guy proceeds to tell his theory, what he thinks, maybe how the world came to be. He says, God made the world. He moved his magic wand and said, abracadabra, there's the world. Fine, that's his theory. The theory is different, which is his explanation, is different than God. God is an assumption. Okay, you cannot confuse an assumption with a theory. Hypothesis with theory. And yeah, we define it, has to be an object. Only objects may be said to exist. Concepts cannot exist, like in ordinary speech. In ordinary speech, you say love exists, not in science. Science, you can't say something as stupid as love exists or information exists or energy exists. Concepts do not exist, not in science. Only objects can be said to exist. You can say a dog exists, a rock exists, a tree exists. You cannot say that hate exists. Not in science. In ordinary speech, yeah, not in science. Okay, so you need to learn the language of science. Okay, what else we have here? Another comment along the same lines, I think. Okay, and this fellow says, seems like an object or a thing would have to be materially constituted and have extension. No and no. Okay, first let's go with a materially constituted to make sure we eliminate matter. Let's make sure we eliminate matter, first of all, because it's mereology. It's what something is made of. But it turns out that not all objects are made of particles, of atoms, of whatever, okay? There's a triangle. Now, that triangle, I made it with my pen, and the paper has atoms. The pen has atoms, the ink, right? But not the triangle. The triangle is not made of matter, and neither is the chair that I'm thinking about. The one that I have in my mind, the one I'm thinking about, that chair is not made of matter, and that's an object too. The word chair refers to that which has shape, and therefore the word chair is always, in every instance, an object. Okay, here and on the other side of the universe, the word chair is an object. The word triangle is an object. Why? Because it has shape. And not all objects are made of matter, especially the ones that we think about and dream about. You know, that beautiful girl that you're dreaming about every night, she's not made of matter. Okay, and the other issue is extension. Extension is a verb. Okay, for the purposes of science, extension is a verb. I don't think I need to clarify that any further. The word motion in ordinary speech is a noun, not in science, not in physics. The word motion is a verb. Orbit is a verb. Movement, itinerary, all verbs. And extension is a verb. Okay? So no, you can't say that an object is that which is extended or which has extension or anything along those lines, because first you need to define what an object is, and later, two years later, you define what motion is based on that, because what is motion? Two or more locations of an object. So you need to define the word object before you define the word motion for the purposes of physics. Can't be in the opposite direction. Okay, here, moving on. We got a lot of material today to cover. Okay, here we go. Emptiness present in any physical body must have shape, and according to your definition, it's become object, but fact is emptiness is not an object. In other words, he's saying if you create vacuum, perfect vacuum, total vacuum within a chamber, I used to do that. Not perfect vacuum. We couldn't get perfect vacuum. We operated in 5 times 10 to the minus 7 torr. So we also always had particles inside the chamber. But let's assume perfect. We remove all matter from the chamber. There's not a single drop of particles, ether, of anything in there. Except in the religion of quantum mechanics, they say they're still positive and negative particles, matter and antimatter, colliding and separating, all this nonsense. Okay, but we're going to assume there's absolutely nothing in there. Okay, and he says, well, hold it. You've got that space enclosed within a chamber, so it has shape, and therefore you've converted that empty space into an object because it does have a perimeter, which is the box that encloses it. Okay. The question is valid. We're going to answer that now, okay? And here's the answer to that first one. Okay, here's a completely empty space. You see nothing in there. Okay, there's nothing in there. So is empty space a physical object? Well, he says put it in a box and then it will be an object because now you have a border around it. So let's do that. Okay, we're going to put the box in empty space and we're going to remove all the matter from inside the box. So now, according to this gentleman, he says, okay, now inside that box you have shape. Why? Because it's contoured by the box. Okay, that's his argument. Okay, I hope you are understanding the argument. Okay, let's do a little mental experiment here. We have our little astronaut. We send him out into space with a box, and he goes out of his capsule, and he opens the box, captures a box full of space, and brings that space down to Earth, brings the box down to Earth, okay? And so here's the million-dollar question, okay? Is the space that he trapped out there in space the same space that he brought here on Earth? He opened the box, says there's the space, or we can look at it through the window if necessary. Fine, we don't open the box. Is the space inside the box the same space that was out there that he boxed out there? Or did it seep right through the interstices of the atoms that comprise the box? Can you enclose space? Can you capture space? If you have this situation here again, you have that situation, a box, you got it on Earth, and the Earth goes around the sun, and that box is moving with the Earth. Is it always the same space inside that box, or is the box just going through space? did you capture space and are you dragging space around the sun? Or are you leaving space behind every time the box moves around the sun together with the Earth? And so if space is not a physical object, you are fooling yourself into thinking that when you create complete empty space within a chamber, that you have trapped a volume of space. Okay? This is the notion people have that, oh, I've got a bunch of space trapped there. I'm going to take it, to my garage. Now you can't do that because the space just went through your box, because you can't trap that which has no shape, because you got to define what space is, and space is a concept. Space is a synonym of nothing, of vacuum. And what does that mean? It has no shape. You cannot trap within a chamber, fixed chamber, that which has no shape. And you're saying, well, it took the shape of the chamber. Well, please color code it so that when we bring it over here and open the box, we can see all that space coming out, or we can see it inside the box. We can see all the space with little color codes in there. No, you're fooling yourself by thinking that you trapped space, or that the astronaut trapped space out there and brought that space down to Earth. He says, oh, I've got space. Oh, it's worth $1 million, all this empty space that I've got inside the box. No, the guy's fooling himself. The space was left behind because there is no such thing as space. You can't trap space and bring it down here to Earth. That's the issue. Okay? Anyways, that's the answer. Here's another issue brought on by another fellow. Okay, it says, can roasts be used to develop an electromagnet or a generator? In such manner, how would roasts be used to manipulate gravity? Well, the first issue is that science and technology are two separate things. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Technology we develop by trial and error. We try one thing, it doesn't work, we try another one. I worked in the industry for many years, and not a single individual on planet Earth, okay, knows what a field is. And we talked about field every day. We use the word field, it's a very common word in the industry. No one knows what a field is. Does that mean that you cannot develop a gadget because you don't know what a field is? Of course you can. You had, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Thomas Alva Edison. He developed the filament for the light bulb. Did he know any electricity? Did he know very sophisticated math? No. He just went in there, tried one thing after another until he got the material he needed, and then he built his little bulb, his factory, and started selling and making millions. So you don't need any math or any science, either one, to develop technology. And I always give the example also of the Iranians. They know quantum mechanics to the letter, just like anybody in the West. They know the math. They know. They also even have good spying abilities. They have ears and eyes out there, and they still don't have a bomb. And you say, how can that possibly be if they've got the math? They know the relations. They know how uranium, has how much energy there is in the atom, all that kind of stuff. They don't have a bomb. Why? Because science and technology have nothing in common. Okay? I know you're going to blow your top with that, say, Bill, you're crazy. Yeah. Technology we develop by trial and error. You develop that in the garage. Okay? You don't need to know what a field is. You don't need to know what mass is. You do not need to know what energy is to develop a gadget. You just need to try one thing after another until you get it right. Then you go to the patent office and you just patent a device. Do they ask you anything about energy, mass, time, all that? Well, only if it's pertinent, but it's not important. You just give them a device and say, patent this. That's it. So no, this big error, this notion that the mathemagicians have spread out there, that we wouldn't have computers if it weren't for quantum mechanics, and we wouldn't have GPS if it weren't for relativity, absolute garbage, nonsense, poppycock. nothing, one thing has nothing to do with the other. The way they developed GPS is by running experiments like Gravity Probe A. And then later on they ran Gravity Probe B, but first they ran Gravity Probe A to find out where they were going to put the satellites, because they needed to know how much difference in the clocks were at different altitudes. Okay, so they made adjustments there. Computers, they still don't know what a field is. They still don't know what a mass is. They don't know what charge is. They don't know what an electron looks like or is. Does that prevent them from developing the computer, which is, a bunch of transistors? Absolutely not. All you need to know is how much electricity you got to run through here and there, and what could be happening with the atoms. Okay, you don't need to know the exact thing. In fact, they've got it wrong anyways, I'm telling you. But you need to know about carriers, especially positive carriers, negative carriers. They explain it in their own way, but that's absolutely not essential to develop the device. All you need to know is, have an idea of the numbers. For example, how many moles of a certain chemical element you have in there, that sort of thing. But you do not need to know exactly what an electron looks like, what an atom looks like. You do not need to know what a field is. You do not need to know what energy is. All you need to know is be able to do is to use the values. And even there, math could be helpful. Math is not always essential to developing gadgets. Again, Thomas Alva Edison, he knew very little, if any, math. He didn't care about math. He didn't use any math, not to develop at least his filament, okay, or his phonograph and all these other inventions that his company made. Okay, what do I have here? Oh yeah, because the other part of the question, let me put that up there again, if I can find it. Was something about gravity. Okay, it says, could it be used to manipulate gravity? Well, the issue here is the following. We don't manipulate gravity. Gravity manipulates us. And the way it works is that here you have the math model on the left, and they just measure and say, well, this guy measures 25 kilograms up there and 50 kilograms down here. Okay. Under the rope model, we say, look, gravity is explained with the ropes. The closer you are to the earth, the more the ropes fan out, and that's why you're attracted at a faster rate. In other words, acceleration of gravity. Okay, so what we use the rope for is to explain the mechanism of gravity. Okay, and yes, it's got to be a pull force, and here I have some evidence and proof. And what else? And demonstration for you. Here we have good old Mr. Richard Muller. He's from the University of Berkeley. I think he still works there. So he says, for example, if you have the Earth here, there's a big mass here, and you have your little mass over here. That's you sitting on top of the world there. The big mass is the Earth, right? Every atom on Earth is pulling on every atom of you. You're also pulling on it. Now, how do you pull with particles? Well, you can't, but with a rope, now you have a mechanism of why, the explanation for gravity, why you do not fly out of the earth. Every atom in your body is tied to every atom on earth. When you jump, your ropes get closer together, okay? And immediately when you fall, they fan out again. So even if you move an inch upwards, the number of ropes converging on you is not the same as an inch downwards. Okay? That's what it is. Just the angles of the ropes and how many ropes are acting independently. Okay? And I've explained that in the past. I'm not going to go into detail there. But there you have the mechanism. So no, we do not manipulate gravity. If anything, gravity manipulates us. Okay? Okay, another comment here. Lots of comments. I try to answer as many as I can, but if I left yours out, please don't hit me. I've got too many comments as it is. I'm going to have to cut down on them. There's no such thing as air molecule, this fellow says. Okay, so here's showtime. What I'm going to show you is an MP4. Okay, and I'm going to let someone else answer that question because someone submitted this video to me, and I thought it was interesting to use to answer this fellow. Okay, so here goes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.
Here is a piston that can slide up and down. Under the piston are some BBs. Now when I turn on this motor and touch the cylinder to the vibrating bit, the BBs are sent jumping. See how the continual bombardment by these very small BBs holds the large piston up. It certainly seems that a continual bombardment by small objects can hold up a much larger object. Here is a similar cylinder and piston, but this piston has no BBs under it. Now I'm going to blow air in under the piston. And close the valve so that none of the air can escape. Now, what's holding the piston up? The piston is being held up by air, but it acts exactly the same way as it did when it was held up by the bombardment of the tiny BBs. It certainly looks as if air might be made up of tiny invisible pellets or particles far smaller than the BBs. Something we can't see is holding the piston up. Now this is one piece of circumstantial evidence that suggests very tiny invisible particles are bombarding the piston and holding it up just as the BBs did. This leads us to think that air may be made up of tiny particles.
Okay, so that gives you an idea that where they got the notion of molecules. Okay, here's a couple more from that same guy, just to rub it in, okay, because I think he's got the right notion here for you to accept that there are such things as atoms and molecules out there. Okay, here's another evidence proof. Okay, here goes.
Now, smoke from the match is inside the chamber. The bright spots are particles of smoke magnified so that we see them 100 times bigger than they really are. Now, what's making them dance around? What's pushing them? Well, I believe they're being pushed around by tiny moving particles that are too small to be seen even through the microscope.
Okay, and the last one, there's one more. Okay, let me get this one in there. This one has to do with water. Here it goes.
Water appears to come out of the tap in a continuous stream, but I say it's made up of tiny particles which we call molecules. This is a chemical made up of small individual chunks of material which we will be able to see only with the aid of a microscope. If we mix some of this chemical with the water, and put a drop of it on a slide, we then can use a microscope to see what's going on inside the drop of water. There it is again. Something is pushing the little chunks of chemical around. What's making them move like that? It seems as if the only reasonable answer is to assume that water is made up of molecules that are moving.
Okay, so that gives you an idea that there's something invisible that we cannot see, and we call those molecules, atoms, etc. Now, I don't have a problem with that because what we do in science, rational science, is we make an assumption. We make an assumption that there are molecules, that there are atoms. They form part of crystal lattices, gases, liquids, etc. And based on that assumption, then we explain the theory. And if you can explain the theory, you can explain the mechanism, you're okay, no problem. So you got to make some assumptions. And the assumptions are always regarding the stuff we can't see, and in many cases that we can't touch. Okay. So I think that was pretty good. And there's a couple more even more profound issues there, but I just didn't want to spend all day on it. But yeah, there are such things as molecules. Molecule is a word we use to refer to a bunch of atoms that form some kind of compound. They get together and they form this thing. Could be iron, could be a gas, a liquid, whatever. And it's just a word we use for that. That's it. So there is such a thing as a molecule, but if you don't think there are molecules, you got to explain. You got to explain stuff like what this guy explained. How do you explain that? Smoke and particles suspended in water that are being moved around by what? By spirits. What are you going to call those? Well, we call them molecules. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Next one. Getting to the end of comments, hopefully here. Too many of them. Okay, if we got the closest point and the furthest point in Earth's orbit around the sun and use Newton's inverse square law at each point, we could determine a weight change, right? How much would that be? Okay, first issue is that in science we do not use math. Okay, we do not use equations. We do not measure anything. We do not use any calculations. In science we have to explain. We do not calculate and just give a description. Say, I don't know, the speed of gravity or the acceleration of gravity is 9.8 meters per second square, or the velocity of light 300,000 kilometers per second. That's not science. That's stamp collecting, as Mr. Rutherford once said. We don't do stamp collecting. Okay, so this gentleman, Michelson, he spent all his life measuring the speed of light. He never was a scientist. He never did science. All he did was, some nonsense there about measurement, which has nothing to do with science. So what is the speed of light? The way we say it in science, we say it very accurately, very precisely. We say the speed of light is fast. Now, how's that for accuracy? Now we have to explain why it's fast, why it travels fast, what's the cause, what's the mechanism that makes it go so fast. And yeah, with the rope, we have a torsion, and torsion is the fastest thing imaginable, faster than any rocket any humans ever built. Torsion is the fastest thing that you can imagine. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing faster than a torsion from the physical world, okay? Of course, speed of light, speed of diarrhea, that's fast, but that's different. Okay, so here's what this fellow was referring to, okay? And if the Earth is closer to the sun, it weighs more, and if it's farther away, it weighs less. That's it. That's all we need to know as far as accuracy. I hope that's precise enough, okay? And then this is the reason it's fast. The weight changes, okay? You have more ropes when fanning out when the Earth is closer to the sun. That's it. That's the reason. That's the reason for the acceleration of gravity. You have what is a field? A value at each point in space. The closer you get to the object, the greater the gravity or the greater the weight, and the farther away, the lesser the weight. There you have it. That's the reason why every point in space has a different weight, because you have the different number of ropes converging on whatever object you have there, whatever hydrogen atom you have there, you have different number of ropes converging upon it. That's it. Now you have a cause, you have a reason for gravity, you have for the acceleration of gravity, and for an explanation for weight. Okay, that's it. So yeah, like someone asked earlier, we do not manipulate gravity. What we do is we explain it. That's what we do in science. If you want to manipulate it, you got to go with technology. You're in the wrong forum. This is science. Okay, we don't do we don't do technology here. We don't do inventions, any of that. Okay, and I had a final one here. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for this fellow, but I'll just put this up here. And he said, He tried to draw the helium atom using the rope model. He says the helium atom more like this. Fusion in stars would seem to suggest so. However, this is identical to a hydrogen molecule, is it not? And then on the other one, he said, or is the helium atom like this, as a large atom with ropes penetrating to form a smaller atom inside? In other words, he's talking about nested shells. Okay, it somewhat resembles the 2s orbitals of quantum, although helium is said to have a 1s orbital in QM. And yeah, he's totally right on that. What can I say? I say that, I haven't had time to look at helium. Been bogged down with so many things, but it's a valid question, obviously. And all I can tell you, some people in the rational science group do look at this issue. They're trying to figure these things out, what the molecule, what the atoms look like, the different elements. Here's the helium atom according to quantum. And we are pretty much in the same boat with quantum mechanics as far as this is concerned, except we don't have those two little beads going up and down, okay? So if this is helium, the question is, how does that differ from the hydrogen atom? And because, in the case of helium, you have four objects in there. It's like four hydrogen atoms smashed together. You have not only two protons, but you have two neutrons. Whereas in hydrogen, you don't. You just have a single regular hydrogen, right? All you have is a single proton. Deuterium does have a neutron inside it, but not regular hydrogen. The issue is that, we have not solved all these problems. We have not gone in there and made it'd be nice if someone had the time to go in there and look at all the elements and try to figure their constitution, what they look like under the rope model. And you do have a guide, and I talked about that the other day, the fact that you have the orbitron model. If you look at the word orbitron for atoms, right? Because I think there's a car also called orbitron. Orbitron for atoms, and they'll show you the different levels, the S, the P, the D, all the levels for the atoms, for the primary elements. And I think that's what the rope model look like. They look like all those orbitron models. So if you go in there and just look at the orbitron model, all you have to do is just mimic them with a rope, and you're done. Because the orbitron model describes essentially what we're saying with a rope. They are not little beads going around orbitals. They are balloons. That's what an atom is. An atom is a balloon, okay? And this nonsense that Rutherford said that an atom is mostly empty space, only between his ears. That's what mostly empty space. In fact, Mr. Khalili, Al-Khalili, Jim Al-Khalili, in his notion of the atom, is that, it's empty space, but empty space is not empty because it's made of all these matter and antimatter particles that constantly come in and out of the void. In other words, the void is made of particles. So I don't know how they reconcile Rutherford's empty space with the fact that space is not empty according to quantum mechanics. There's a contradiction there, but everybody just goes, they don't care about all those things. They just mention it, and that's it. Okay, let's get to Mr. Khalili. Finally got there. He talked about energy. And the main issue here is, what is energy? Well, the question I think is wrong already, okay? And I'll get to that in a second. But if someone asks you, what is a rock? Here you have the E.T. He comes from the land of the Klingons. You have a Klingon comes to Earth, and you got to teach him your language. And so the first thing you're going to do is point and name what? You're going to point to objects and name them for him. And so he says, well, what is a rock? I heard you say the word rock. What is a rock? So what would you do? Do you need to throw a rock? Do you need to roll it down a hill? No. You point to it and you say, look, This is a rock. If I can get it up here, that's a rock. See how simple it was? You point and you name. Now, how hard was that? Okay. Is there any motion in that picture? I can also show you. I had a rock here. I don't have it anymore. You point, you show them a rock and say, this is a rock. That's it. It doesn't have to be moving. You point and name. And at that moment, it's the only object in the universe. You don't compare it against anything else. You just say, this is a rock. Okay? It's the only object in the universe. It's not moving. You just point and name. That's how you present an object in physics. And that's the way you teach your language to an ET. Okay? Okay, so he asks you, I heard you say the word tree. What is a tree? And so you point, you say, that's a tree. Okay, is it moving? Is it shaking its leaves? Is the wind blowing in there? No. You just point and call the word. You say tree. You can call it X if you want, but you just name it and point. That's how you present an object in physics. And last one here, he says, you said you have a car. What is a car? You point and you name. You say, that's a car. Does it have to be rolling? Does it have to be at the junkyard being trashed? Do you need to crash it against the tree? Do you need to move it? No. You point and name. Car, tree, rock. I think you're getting the hang of it, right? Okay. That's the way we do it in physics. Okay, so now you say energy. What you going to point to? What you going to draw? What you going to illustrate? Can you point to energy? And you say, well, I can't see energy. Well, make it visible. What do you have in your mind? What do you think energy is? And that's the issue with Al-Khalili today. He's going to tell us what energy is, okay? And so he starts out, before I get to that, just one more issue here, and that's this. An object you point to, it's got to be static. The guy on the right, that's not an object. That's called a jumping kangaroo, okay? And jumping kangaroo is not an object, okay? The object is the guy standing still. It's the only object in the universe. It's not moving with respect to anything. That's an object. A concept, in this case, a dynamic concept, that's moving. And that's not an object. So when you say a jumping kangaroo, that's not an object. Neither is a black cat or a dead cat. That's something in motion. You say, well, dead is not in motion. Yeah, dead is the opposite of alive. So you're comparing dead against alive. When you make a comparison, it's no longer an object. Now it's a concept. Okay? Concept is a relationship. It's a relation between two objects. That's why the word concept, the definition of the word concept is a word that invokes two objects or two words treated as object. And the most famous case is the word object itself. To have object, you need a contrast. You need space and the object. So you need two. What are you doing with space? Space is a concept. You're treating it as an object. You're treating that background as an object. Okay? So if it's moving, it's a concept, no matter what. So anything that moves is a concept. Now some people say, well, don't all objects in the universe move? Yeah, you got the wrong context again. Every object that exists in the universe, right? Because the triangle doesn't exist. The triangle is not made of matter, okay? No, especially the one I'm dreaming about, right? But all objects that exist, that are out there, all objects move. That's not the context. That's you're focusing on the wrong issue. All objects move, but when I point to the word to a tree and I name it, that tree is the only object in the universe. It's not made of anything, whatever. I'm pointing and naming. I just need to identify the object to relate it to the word. That's important to understand. You need to understand that. The word object refers to a single object in the universe. It's not moving. It's not compared against anything, okay? It doesn't have any adjectives in front of it. There's no such thing in science as a black cat. There's a thing in science called a cat. Black cat is already a concept. because you're saying black cat. Well, what do you mean by black cat? Well, there's a white cat, there's a yellow cat, there's a green cat, and this guy's a black cat. So you're comparing. It's like furniture. When you compare table against chair, table is no longer an object under that context. Furniture is a concept. Chair, the only chair in the universe, the one you're pointing to, that's an object. As soon as you put something else and you say, well, a chair is not a table, now you're talking about concepts. So you got to keep the context in focus. You can't lose track of the context because you immediately get into ordinary speech and you don't realize that. Okay, so you got to speak a different language when you get into rational science. Rational science makes a big point of that, what people call or dismiss as semantics. No, it's not semantics. It ain't semantics because you need to establish the language for science. And for that, you need what you call semantics. You need definitions. And you need to stay very strictly with the definitions. They got to be rigorous. And that means that you can use them consistently, rationally, meaning scientifically. Okay? So language is extremely important in science because you're going to be conveying your theories, your ideas, your mechanism to someone else. Okay, let's continue on here with Mr. Al-Khalili. And he starts his presentation, as I was going to say a minute ago, and he starts out on the right foot, I guess, okay, or more or less. He says, looking at the earth at night reveals to us how successful we've been in harnessing and manipulating energy and how important it is to our existence. Harnessing, manipulating. How do you manipulate concepts? I try to manipulate love, try to manipulate information. I can't. I can imagine it, I can reason it, I can use it in my speech, etc., but I can't touch information. I try to touch information, I always touch papers or computers. I can't touch information. And this guy's talking about harnessing and manipulating energy. What the hell is he talking about? Okay? So in a way, he's trying to get on the right foot, but I don't know if he achieved that with that statement there. But then he makes a bigger blunder because he asked the right question. Okay, and this is the question he asks. He says, energy is vital to us all. Okay, great. We use it. Energy is an it, not in science. Only objects are its in science, in physics. If it's not an object, it's not an it. It's a concept. It must be defined. It only refers to objects. To build the structures that surround and protect us, we use it, again, to power our transport. How do you use energy to power a transport and light our homes? How do you use a concept to do that? I thought we used objects. There's got to be an object there coming through the line. And energy is not, as far as I know, is not an object, but maybe he clarifies that for me today, okay? And even more crucially, energy is essential for life itself. Oh, is that so? I didn't know I had any energy, okay? Without the energy we get from the food we eat, we die. But what exactly is energy? Good question. What is energy? Because I thought energy was a concept, but he's asking the question, what? And is energy a what? Well, I thought it was never, I didn't think it was a what, but he seems to think it's a what. And in science, the only whats are physical objects. And here he answers more or less. He said, in attempting to answer these questions, scientists have come up with a strange set of laws that would link together everything from engines to humans to stars. It turns out that energy, so crucial to our daily lives, also helps us make sense of the entire universe. Jesus, I didn't know it was so powerful, this thingy he calls energy. I'm really curious now in trying to find out what this energy thingy is. Okay, he probably is an expert because, he says it's so vital to our lives. It keeps us alive. It runs the world. All machines run with it. I want to know what this stuff is. It must be magical stuff, this energy thingy. Okay, let's find out what it is. Okay, and so here he goes. He says, he tries to illustrate in one of his videos where he talks about energy. He gives us 6 different notions or different visions of what energy is. Good. I love it because I want to know what energy is. And here I have visions. In other words, he tries to visualize energy for us. Okay, let's find out. Let's see if we can figure out what this energy, magical stuff called energy is. Here's the first one. Okay, he shows it as a bunch of particles moving around. Okay, so I guess that's energy, a bunch of particles that are moving around because that's what he illustrated. I mean, objectively, that's what I have in front of me. Then he goes in there and he puts another vision of what he calls energy, and here it is, the other one. Okay, let's see if I can put it up here. Okay, and here you can see it. Looks like smoke or something. I don't know. That's what it appears to me. I don't know what it appears to you, but it seems like smoke to me. Okay, he goes in there and makes another vision of what he thinks energy is. And again, it looks a lot like smoke to me. Or maybe, maybe it's some kind of gas maybe that's diffusing in there. I mean, that's what I think it is. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know what it looks like to you. Okay, but I can only tell you what I'm seeing in front of my face, in front of my eyes, and all I see is what looks like gas or some kind of smoke or some kind of powder maybe spread in the air. And that jives with the particles that he put in earlier. Okay, here's another vision. I guess he treats it like turbulence, like waves, maybe a fluid, like when you drop something in the water and it just dissolves in there, or diffuses, dissolves. Okay, here's another vision. Okay, that he puts out. These are all from his video, by the way. Okay, these. Okay, I modified them a little so the BBC won't complain that I'm stealing their copyrights or anything. Here he puts flames or fire, which kind of is a little different than the gas and the waves that he showed just up to that point. Now here he's looking at fire or flames. I guess he was thinking of the Greek elements, the four elements plus the quintessential, the ether. But he apparently included the ether as well. This looks like the ether here, maybe all this mystical mist, these ghosts and goblins and bed sheets are flying around. All these are images that he put for what he thinks energy is, okay? Okay, well, one of the big problems is everything is moving, and what did we just say? That anything that moves is a concept. But he asks, what is energy? So he's saying that energy is a thing. He says that he manipulates it, that it keeps us alive, and we use it for engines and who knows what else. So, apparently he treats it like a physical object. So I want to know what the object is, but all he showed was stuff in motion. I wanted him to kind of freeze the images and show me exactly what energy is before he moves it, before he uses it for all his things that he's going to use it for, right? And so I took the liberty here to take still images from each one of these so that I can, figure out what energy is. And here it is. Here's the summary of what he posted, okay? In one case, he put particles. I took a snapshot of that. Then we have gas, a smoke, maybe some kind of gas as well. Waves, maybe moving in some kind of fluid or in a gaseous medium. Flames, and then what appear to be ink and water, maybe the ether. I don't know. This is what I see. This is objectively what he put in his video. These are the notions he's got of what energy is. So what am I supposed to make of this? What is that? That body, this body he calls energy. I mean, the first issue, he doesn't define the word energy. But the second issue, he says, oh, energy, we can do all these fancy things with it. It's like saying wood. What is wood? Well, we can turn it into a chair. We can turn it into a battering ram, a baseball bat. Those are things you can do with wood. But what is wood? Well, wood is that thing that I'm pointing to. That's wood. You can point to a tree maybe and say, look, we cut that and turn it into wood, or wood is what we find at the lumber yard or whatever. Okay, so first you got to define what the word wood is. And if wood is an object, you point to it, say that's wood, or that's tree, that's chair. That's the way you do it. And here he hasn't pointed to energy, just gave us a bunch of film, video, and I had to kind of make all these still images to find out what he was referring to. And again, some kind of nebulous stuff there that I can't figure out. Maybe it's a bunch of particles, waves, gases, smoke. I don't know. You tell me what this thingy he calls energy is. Okay, so one way of looking at it, because he talks so much about not only energy, but the fact that Einstein came up with an equation, and again, if you can put energy in an equation, I don't think you can put an object in there. Like I can't put a dog in an equation. I can't put a tree in an equation. I can't put a stone in an equation. I got to put a number or a variable that represents a number. That with units and so on. I could put that in an equation, and all those are concepts, or what do they call them? Mathematical objects. But I can't put the word tree in an equation, because I can't do anything with the word tree in an equation. So you can't put objects in an equation. That's why mathematical physics and mathematics in general have no objects in them. They only have concepts, because they can't put an object in an equation. Okay, so let's get that straight up front. And so here's Mr. Heine, and he came up, apparently, he's given credit for coming up with this equation. Energy equals mass times velocity of light squared. Okay, E equals mc squared, famous equation from Einstein. Okay, but we have a little bit of problems, because even with Einstein here, because see, we have Mr. Richard Feynman, who came many years later, and he says we have no idea what energy is. Says it is important to realize that in physics today we have no knowledge of what energy is. And I got a problem with good old Feynman, because he's asking what energy is. He makes the same error that Al-Khalili makes. Apparently Al-Khalili hasn't learned anything, because they both ask what energy is. Energy is not a what. Energy is a concept. In science, we point to objects and define concepts. And here's the definition you can find everywhere. Energy is defined as the capacity, blah, 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 blah. Capacity is a concept. There's no physical standalone object in the universe called capacity. Capacity is a verb. Okay? That's what it is for the purposes of science. I don't care what it is in ordinary speech. In science, capacity is a verb. It's a concept. Okay? And then you have energy, the quantitative property. Transfer to another. How do you transfer a concept, a property? What do you transfer the color red? I mean, I have no idea what these people say when they transfer it to an object. But yeah, that's how they use it. They define it as a concept, and then they want to use it as an object. That's where the problem is. And that's all of mathematical physics, okay? And then just in case, we got a double whammy against good old Heine here, because here you have these two fellows say, hey, we have no idea what mass is. Nature does not offer us any concept as the amount of matter. History has struck down every proposal to define such a term. Even if we could count number of atoms or by any other counting method try to evaluate amount of matter, that number would not equal mass. So here we have all these gurus. They tell you they don't know what energy is. They don't know what mass is. They don't have a definition for mass. They have a definition for energy, whatever that is, the capacity, okay, potential. That's all it is. And so Einstein's equation goes down the drain, and it's irrational to ask, what is energy if energy is a concept? The word what is reserved in science only for objects. You can ask, what is a dog? What is a tree? What is a rock? You can't ask, what is love? Not in science. That's in ordinary speech. You can't ask, what is information? Not in science. That's in ordinary speech or in mathematics. So you can't ask, what is energy? What is magnetism? What is gravity? All those are concepts. You can't ask what. Okay? What you have to say is, please define energy. Please define gravity. And then if you want to explain it, you better use some object to simulate the mechanism. That's the way it works in science. We're interested in mechanisms, not in equations. Okay. Okay. So here we have Einstein's equation. This is the summary of Einstein's equation. Okay. You can see it here. He said energy is equal mass times velocity of light squared. Well, that's like saying love is equal to information times velocity of light squared. I turn love into information, information into love. Is that what energy does? I turn one concept into another concept, both of them undefined or semi-defined or whatever. So what does it matter if you turn mass into energy and energy into mass if we have not understood anything about how the universe works by using these concepts? In fact, all we did was mask, our understanding. We still remain in ignorance with these equations. We have no idea what is happening out there. All we have is concepts with which we name invisible phenomena that we cannot either see or touch, intangible and invisible. And all we can do is say, name it. And by naming it, we're not explaining anything. We need to identify the physical objects that underlie mechanisms, that Mother Nature's secret invisible mechanism. We need to identify her secret agents, her spies. How does she do gravity? How does she do magnetism? That's what we need to figure out. The only way to figure that out is by identifying the invisible, intangible objects. We can't use words such as energy, mass, field, force, time. None of those words help us identify the objects that Mother Nature uses to do her daily work, to run her shop. Okay, and so this is my conclusion from good old Al-Khalili. I think this is what energy is to him, some kind of soul going up to heaven. Is that what it is, a spirit? Whenever you need to put a word inside your presentation, you say, oh, it's energy. So what is energy? Well, we don't know, but we use it at all times. Okay, and then of course you also have Mr. Al-Khalili. He moves in there and tries to explain entropy. Okay, and the issue here with entropy is that apparently is some kind of something related to order. Order? What is order? Order seems like an opinion. For you, what is order to you is disorder for me, and vice versa. Order is an opinion, okay? And what does that have to do with science? And he relates it to energy because they say he does this little history of entropy and how it was related to energy and the second law of thermodynamics, okay? And so you look up and you say, well, what is this famous word entropy? I want to know because it must be some physical object. Again, what is entropy, right? And you look up and you find these definitions. It's a quantity and it's a measure or degree of disorder. What's that got to do with science? What's that got to do with physics? Okay, I mean, here I tried to figure out if this has anything to do with politics, maybe. Maybe this is what it's all about. Order. Right? Maybe it's Stalin or Hitler or Mao Zedong. Okay, maybe one of these guys has something to do with order, or maybe it's got to do with this. I don't know. What is this order stuff? Maybe it's got to do with putting order into town. Okay, is this what entropy is all about? I mean, what does entropy have to do with science? What does it have to do with explaining a mechanism? And yeah, no wonder these people cannot explain anything because they're using concepts and they're using concepts which are irrelevant to physics. And in physics, we need to identify the invisible objects that Mother Nature uses to do her stuff. And then we're done with physics, we're done with science, and then we can all go to extinction. You know what I mean? So we don't need all these concepts such as time and force and field and energy and mass. What do we need those for? Charge? What do we need all that stuff for? Entropy? What's the point of this word entropy? What does it help us in explaining how the universe runs? That we have more disorder in the universe? Well, according to God, He's got order there for you. From your little point of view, you're a little ant looking at the universe. You say, well, there's so much disorder. I don't understand anything. Well, God from up there, from His computer, He says, yeah, I've got order. I'm in control. I know what's going on. I've got gravity controlling all these stars and galaxies. I'm in control. So order, disorder, arrow of time. As you go with the arrow, more disorder. Nothing reassembles itself, and yet we do. We take we take wood and we chop it up. We do all kinds of things. We build a chair. Well, I could argue that that disorder turned into order because now we have something useful: a chair, table. Uh, you make a baby. Does it become more disorder over time? Maybe it does. I don't know. When I had babies, had three babies, they were pretty messy, but pretty disordered when they were kids. Now they're very well ordered compared to when they were babies. So I don't know about disorder or disorder. I think it's got to do with opinions. And they bring in the word time in there, like the arrow of time and so on. And the problem is that they never define time. Okay, so this entropy thing is a one-way arrow, and they say the more you go into the future, the more disorder it is. But we don't know what time is. Here you have the Wikipedia and the New Advent. They say they're still working on the word time. Okay, yeah, and we don't use the word time in science. They only use it in mathematics, and so we don't know what they're breaking their heads about, and whether they're ever going to figure it out, anyways, right? And then, here you have a couple people who hyperphysics, they don't even define time. Look, they define displacement, velocity, acceleration. They don't define time. And Wolfram just says it's a quantity. Yeah, it's a quantity that they use in mathematics. It has nothing to do with physics or with science. Okay, we don't need the word time for anything. Before and after, how's that for time? Qualitative time, if we use it at all for anything, but that's fine with us. That's accurate enough. Okay, so what are my arguments against good old Jim here, essentially, to round up the night? He doesn't clarify up front whether energy is an object or a concept. That's where he fails completely. Okay, he asks, "What is energy?" Here I'm watching his entire presentation, and never does he define the word energy. He never tells us what energy is or defines it or anything. So we don't have any idea at the end of this 1 hour show, 1 hour presentation, what energy is or how to define this word. We're still as ignorant as we came in. Then if it's a concept, he can't manipulate it. He can't say he's going to manipulate it. So if energy is a concept and it's what the dictionaries define as the capacity, then obviously there's no physical object called the capacity, and he can't say that he's going to transfer the capacity or convert it into mass or eat it or poop it. It is irrational to propose that concepts have the power to move or be moved in physics. Period. We're done. If an object, Jimmy just has to point to it and name it. So he says energy, that's energy. If it's a what, if it's a thing. He didn't do that. I had to do that for him, and I still don't understand. I see particles over here, waves over there, gas over there, smoke, ether. I don't know. I don't know what energy is. What he means by energy every time he pronounces the word. Maybe it's the quintessential, the fifth element. I don't know. Jimmy did a lot of history on the mathemagicians. Okay, that's great, fine. What did they find out? Well, he and his heroes explained nothing. All he did was say, "Oh, how we developed technology." Okay, and they have lots of equations and no understanding whatsoever. He can't tell you how a magnet attracts another or how gravity works by using this word energy. And he glorifies technology we have developed a result of energy. Unfortunately for him, technology has nothing to do with science. Technology we develop by trial and error, and science is about explaining. Okay, we'll see you with this on Sunday. And I'm going to continue with this fellow because I've got at least one more issue with him. Big important issue. I'm going to deal with that on Sunday. And until then, go ahead and ask questions. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can. And no, I do not censor anyway. I don't block. So feel free to post whatever you want. You want to cuss my mother? Go ahead and do it.